Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services, if we can please kindly turn off all cell phones or electronic devices, or please place them on silent. Thank you.
Friends, our family is so very grateful for your presence here today. Certainly your expressions of comfort and support during this very difficult time, and certainly for all of the support these past 2 very long and difficult years. Immediately following our service here in the chapel, we will proceed with the service of interment at the Locust Wood Cemetery in Cherry Hill, and thereafter we'll be returning home to our residence at 4 Carlton Lane in Voorhees, where we will be observing our period of mourning throughout the remainder of this day. As many of us know, this evening begins a Yontif, the last day of Pesach. So there we refrain from any formal morning observance, but the family will be receiving Saturday evening after Yontif is over, beginning at 7 o'clock at the house. In his sorrow, Job cried out, Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, yehi shem Adonai mevorach. God, you have given a life dear and precious to us, and now that life has returned to you, O God, its everlasting source. We thank and we praise you, O God, for the blessing of life. An ancient people, we are well acquainted with grief and with the valley of shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us. Yet the centuries have taught us that Keter Shem Tov, the crown of a good name, endures beyond the grave, and there is strength in faith. So with Job we say, Adonai Natan, God, you have given. You gave us a loved one who will not be forgotten. And for all that was good and enduring in Stephen's life, we now offer the deepest thanks with our hearts. And with Job we say, Adonai Lakach, God, you have taken away. And now we pray for strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust, before which we acknowledge, O God, your sovereignty and your love, and proclaim, as Job did generations ago, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach, blessed be the name of God, now and forever. I am very blessed by the presence of my colleague from Congregation Beth Emeth in Albany, Cantor Sharon Kahn, and we'll continue with the 121st Psalm.
Shama
Shall I cry out in anger, O God, because thy gifts are mine but for a while? Shall I be ungrateful for the moments of laughter, the seasons of joy, the days of gladness and festivity, when tears cloud my eyes and darken the world? My heart is heavy within me. Shall I blot from mind the love I have known and in which I have rejoiced, when a fate beyond my understanding takes from me friends and kin whom I have cherished, and leaves me bereft of shining presences that have lit my way through years of companionship and affection? Give me the vision, O God, to see and feel that embedded deep in each of thy gifts is a core of eternity, undiminished and bright, an eternity that survives the dread hours of affliction and misery. Those we have loved, though now beyond our view, have given form and quality to our being. They have led us into the wide universe we continue to inhabit, and their presence is more vital to us than their absence. For what thou givest, O God, thou takest not away. And bounties once granted shed their radiance forevermore. You're certainly welcome to join with me as I recite the familiar and very comforting words of the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. It was a year ago, November, just around Thanksgiving time, in the midst of the worldwide pandemic and before any of us could be vaccinated, so we were still all distanced from another. And after having had neck surgery because of symptoms he was experiencing that did not subside well after the physical therapy, Steve called me to tell me that he had received the devastating diagnosis of ALS. We were not totally taken off guard because we knew that it might well be a possibility. But the reality of the diagnosis was, as you can imagine, devastating to say the least. Yet, in his typical stoic and pragmatic manner, Steve never complained. He never asked why. He never seemed angry or embittered. He faced the harsh reality with courage and with fortitude. Steve told me during that conversation that the diagnosis was in fact a death sentence, which literally sent chills through my body. So although that we knew this day would inevitably come, that we would be gathered together to mourn the loss of someone so dear and so precious to so many of us, to celebrate a life lived well and a life replete with blessings, accomplishments, and achievements, nevertheless, being here now today seems so very surreal. How could such a devastating and horrific illness rob our family of someone who is so very important and so very special to all of us? How could this happen to such a kind and caring person? Someone who would never hurt a flea or would give you the shirt off his back. But how well I know that there are questions for which there are no answers. And if we did know why, if we did get answers as to the mystery of life that so often confounds us, still the pain would be no less. The loss would still be bitter beyond words. So in our Jewish tradition, rather we ask not why, but how. How can we draw comfort from our faith and from each other? How can we find meaning and blessing in life regardless of the tragedies that beset those whom we love and those for whom we care? Our coming together here today is indeed like one big, giant hug. It has often been said that we know our siblings longer than most anyone else in our lives. And how true it is. No matter what the relationship, no matter how complicated it might often be, we share memories and experiences with our siblings that no one else knows and no one else shares. So as difficult as it is for me to be officiating at this service and to be eulogizing my brother Steve, it is not only an honor, but the last gift that I can give to my dear brother. In our family growing up, Steve was the firstborn, the eldest, the one who paved the way for myself and Mariam. Sometimes, though, that path made it a little harder for us to follow, because if Steve did something out of whack, we then felt the repercussions down the road. Any of us who have ever driven with Steve knows that he often had a lead foot. So when he would get into any of a number of fender benders or accidents with any of a number of our parents' cars over the years, after he first began to drive, it only put more pressure on Mariam and myself when it was our turn, and when we got our licenses and our parents were far more stringent with us. 4 years older than I am, and 9 years older than Mariam, Steve was our big brother to whom we looked up. Steve was a gentle spirit, always popular in school, was a terrific athlete who, unlike his younger brother, had a natural talent and was great at whatever sport he was playing, from soccer in high school, team captain at college, to varsity shortstop at camp, and golf in his later years. Steve was always so handsome, with a $1 million smile, and always so very easy to be around. Like our mother, Steve was also extremely even-tempered, certainly growing up in a household where the rest of us were a bit more intense and emotional. In fact, the only times I ever remember that Steve really raised his voice or would shout like no other was during sports games, either live or watching TV. There were times that the walls seemed to shake whenever Steve, my parents, and Mariam would be watching a game, especially his beloved Eagles. Not inheriting the Shpeen sports enthusiast gene that seemed to skip over me, many times I would run downstairs from my room to make sure that everything was okay, given all of the shouting and screaming at the TV during the games. Steve was also very sentimental and nostalgic. He remembered events and things that happened while we were growing up that often astounded me and Mariam, and that we had perhaps long forgotten. After we were all vaccinated and could visit again, and while he was still somewhat mobile, I took Steve on a drive around town to see all the homes in which we had lived and in which we had grown up, from Morristown to Haddontown to Charleston Riding, and all of the schools which we attended, as well as my father's original dental office in Westmont and our grandparents' pharmacy in Haddonfield. That day, Steve reminisced and shared with me things that I had long forgotten or never even remembered. In particular, before Mariam was even born, he told me of his walking me up the hill from our home in Morristown, in which we shared a bedroom, to the library in town that he pointed out to me for weekly story hour. That was an afternoon drive that I will forever remember and cherish for the rest of my life. In many ways, we had an idyllic childhood typical of the 1960s, or at least we thought so growing up. Surrounded by our extended family, the three of us were the only grandchildren and the only niece and nephews, so we were enveloped by that attention, that adoration, and that love as children. Of course, Stephen, being the eldest, held a special place in the pecking order. From summers each year spent at Camp Harlem, then off to Dickinson College and to Penn Dental School, Steve was the only one of the three of us who remained here in Cherry Hill for his entire adult life. Whereas my work, Mariam's work in the Jewish community took us hither and yonder, and while our parents themselves eventually had moved to Arizona, Steve was the mainstay, the constant link we all had to our hometown community. Perhaps the most pivotal moment in Steve's life, that which was truly transformative and chartered the course for the rest of his years, was when he was fixed up on a blind date by a mutual family friend with Sharon Greenberg, who at the time worked in the travel industry as did our mother. That first date took place on August 18th, 1982. And being one who was ever fascinated with numbers and their significance, the fact that it was on the 18th, Chai, it truly marked the beginning of their lifetime together. When we all met Sharon for the first time at our family Thanksgiving dinner that same year, and by then I was already married myself, we all knew immediately that Sharon was a gem, that Steve had literally hit the jackpot. He won the lottery, and our family was all the better because of her joining the fold. Sharon met Steve just as he was finishing his training in endodontics. They became engaged and were then married on March 18th, 1984. Again, no small coincidence that the date of their wedding was on the 18th day of the month. Again, Chai. Sharon embraced our family, as did Steve with her father Harry of blessed memory, and Sharon's sister Eileen and Chris as well. Together, they built an incredible partnership and shared a wonderful life that spanned nearly 40 years. When Samantha was a toddler and Ben was just 9 months old, they moved into their home in the Beagle Club in Voorhees, where they have spent the remainder of their years together and there raised their family. In particular, the finished basement in that home on Carlton Lane became the centrifugal force, the hub, to which all the cousins would gravitate and spend hours and hours on end together. As Steve built his dental practice, specializing in endodontics, where Sharon assisted over the years in the administrative end, and as Samantha and Ben were growing up, Steve also became involved in the Jewish community, certainly inspired by the role models set by our parents. In addition to his volunteer work and the recognition he received, his life was rounded out by season tickets to the Eagles, preceded by the tailgate parties, and to his love of golf and the many trips he took with his circle of golf friends. Sharon and Steve had an active social life, a wide and varied circle of friends, with some of whom they had each grown up. As a father, and you will hear shortly, Steve absolutely adored his Samantha and Ben, and there was nothing that he would not do to support them over the years, encouraging the interests they wanted to pursue. Steve truly loved them both unconditionally and was so very proud of each of them and all that they chose to do over the years. Certainly, sharing his love of sports and going to the Eagles games was something the three of them did together, and I know meant so much to Steve. And when Samantha met David, and most recently, when Ben met Hannah, Steve was so pleased with the direction in which their lives were heading, the partners they met, and certainly the promise that the future would hold for them in those relationships. 2 years ago, when Archie arrived on the scene, even though it was at the same time that Steve's health began to decline, Archie brought immeasurable happiness, pride, and comfort to Stephen these past 2 years. Every time that Archie would FaceTime with Steve, he always lit up and was so enthralled by his precious grandson. In addition, Steve was like a second father to his niece Hillary, nephews Adam, Jacob, and Max. Since Mariam and Bob lived a good part of their lives here in Cherry Hill, Steve and Sharon's home was a second home for them, as Jacob and Max spent much time there, and Steve was a part of their early childhood on a regular basis. Certainly holidays, celebrations, family dinners were constant occurrences, as well as babysitting the boys when needed. Since my family lived in Albany, our connections were the occasional weekend visits, and especially the summer weeks spent at the Jersey Shore, and when we began taking annual cruises together. Uncle Steve played a key role in Hillary and Adam's lives as they were growing up, as all of the cousins shared a warm and loving bond together. And nearly 13 years ago, when our family was shaken to the core with the tragic death of my wife Susan at the age of 52, Steve was a great source of comfort and support, not merely for me, but certainly for Hillary and Adam as well. Stephen always loved the Jersey Shore. It first began, I think, when my father took us on a drive to Long Beach Island in 1969, shortly before my bar mitzvah, to look at some beachfront property there. That purchase never materialized, but as we grew older and started to have families of our own, our parents began a tradition of renting various homes down the shore for all of us to come together during the summer. Those many memories are amongst the fondest we hold. So about 9 years ago, and with many of his friends already having second homes in Margate, Stephen wanted to build a home there large enough for all of us to gather now with a new generation of children. It was not long after Susan had died, and he told me that a key motivation for doing so was for all of our extended family to have a gathering place to come together. Although Sharon was supportive of this endeavor, as she was with everything and anything Stephen wanted to do, she never ever said no to him. That beach house on South Douglas was truly Stephen's happy place and represented a dream fulfilled. That home slowly replaced the home in Voorhees as the family gathering spot over this past decade and provided memories that we will forever cherish. Even as difficult as it was, and his mobility diminished, spending time down at the shore this past summer invigorated Stephen and always brought a smile and a sense of joy no matter what. Not too long ago, I reminded Stephen that not many of us have the good fortune in our lives to fulfill a lifelong dream as he did, and spending as many wonderful summers at his happy place as he was able to do. Indeed, that beach home was a gift he provided for all of us in the family, for the memories it enabled us to create and to share together. During the nearly 40 years of my rabbinate, I dare say that I have seen more illness and tragedy than I had ever imagined possible. When Susan was dying, I thought then that nothing could be worse. But in all my years in the rabbinate, I have come to realize that ALS is about the worst that could happen to a person, especially being trapped in their body as they eventually are. But given the horrific diagnosis, and given the remarkable way in which Steve dealt with his prognosis and decline, of one thing I am certain: no one could have been better cared for and attended to in the manner in which he was than my brother. For 18 months, he was treated like a prince and taken care of with incredible love and attention. And as we all know, in addition to his wonderful group of caregivers, Richmond, Bianca, Juana, it all was because of Sharon. For 18 months, day in and day out, hour after hour, Sharon was incredible in what she did for our brother. He was well-groomed, well-dressed, well-fed, well-nurtured. She never left his side. She made sure that Steve enjoyed all of the foods that he loved. And even when he could no longer eat any solids, Sharon would make our grandmother's homemade applesauce she knew Steve loved. When Sharon would give him his medication each day, it was not in a paper cup, as most would do. It was on a beautiful porcelain dish given to Steve with a silver spoon. I have seen a lot of situations over the years, but never a more devoted, attentive, caring, and loving treatment as did our Sharon. And so often at her own self-sacrifice, and all the while managing not only the closure of his office, the sale of his practice, and the beach home, but also the myriad of paperwork and business that still needed to be done. Sharon, what can I say? Mere words are not nearly adequate to describe your love and devotion to our brother. We were spot on that Thanksgiving dinner many years ago when you met all of the family that Steve and all of us truly hit the jackpot, because there are few, if any, others like you, Sharon. Sharon, I know well how it feels to lose your spouse, your best friend and your soulmate in life, to a tragic illness long before their time. But I hope and I pray that you can now find some small measure of comfort in your having enabled Stephen to endure these past 18 months with dignity, with grace, and with courage, and took care of him in the best possible manner. But that those of us who loved and cared for Stephen will also forever be grateful to you for all that you did. Sharon, you will never be alone, for we are all now here for you, to envelop you with our care, our love, our support, and our comfort as you now begin to slowly pick up the pieces of your life. Judaism teaches us that no matter what we face in life, there are lessons to be learned and blessings to be found. If nothing else, what Stephen had to endure, I hope, will teach all of us precious truths about the fragility of life, the values and priorities that are most important to us, what really matters most in this world, and to take the time to treasure so many things that we so often take for granted. Stephen Eric Shpeen has left this world a better place because he walked among us. He lived his life to the fullest extent possible and devoted his time and energy and resources for the healing of others through his professional career, devoted to his community that meant so much to him, was an incredible husband, brother, friend, and a fabulous father to his children. Steve was truly what we call in our tradition a mensch. For so many years, when Steve and I would end a phone conversation, Steve would always close with the same comment to me: "I love you, my brother." So, Steve, as we now bid you farewell and will continue to forever celebrate your life and the blessing you were to all of us, I return those same sentiments, along with these poignant words from Hamlet. Now cracks a noble heart. Good night, sweet prince, and may the flights of angels sing thee to thy rest. I love you, my brother. Amen.
Well, I must first say that, Scott, that was wonderful, and I really appreciate it. And I think you probably took my entire speech. And I only hope to speak those same words with half the charisma that you just displayed. So thank you. Good afternoon. Bear with me. I just want to start by saying how much it means to have all of you here today. For my mom, my sister, myself, as well as the rest of our family, including my father's brother, Michael Scott, as well as my father's sister, Ann Mimi. If I'm not mistaken, I think the last time I was speaking in front of this many people in South Jersey was this close to throwing up all over the bima and the Kor Shalom for my bar mitzvah. But I'll do my best to avoid that today, Mom. Compared to that experience, however, I cannot promise you that I will be able to keep my composure over the next few minutes. For as many of you know, I looked up to my father. He was my best friend. My father battled ALS over the past 2 years, and I can confidently say he fought until the bitter end. His fight and what kept him going has a lot to do with all of you. The love and support we received definitely has not gone unnoticed. The countless visits to my father during his battle, to helping out in any way you could, the list could go on and on. And now to today, looking around the room and being comforted by all of you, from the bottom of our hearts, we thank you. When he was diagnosed, I began to reflect on my relationship with my father, and what I would say on this unfortunate day to truly capture what he meant to me, my sister, and especially my mom. While many good memories would flash through my head, I always came back to the same nightmare. How this day, today, would eventually come and become a reality. As I said, my dad was truly my best friend, making today all that more difficult. He was the best father I could have asked for, and I learned so much from him, as did Sam. Toughness. Not once did he complain about this illness or say how unhappy he was, no matter how many times I would ask him. He knew that complaining would not change anything, and he always remained strong for me, my sister, and my mom. Passion. Boy, did he love his Eagles and his golf. And it's no surprise that I truly am my father's son. I guess I need to yell twice as loud at the TV or at the games for the both of us. I can also tell you, Dad, that Sam and I will never forget, as well as Aunt Mimi, will never forget your lovely Lady Gaga's Bose headphones. On how everyone in our section would always be looking to you, Dad, to give them updates from the radio broadcast. I will miss our best tailgates, our rides home from the stadium with you zooming past everyone on the road to get us home as soon as possible, and our post-game ritual, watching all the recaps and discussing the game ourselves. Section 117, row 22, seat 8, will always be yours. Furthermore, it is going to be hard that I will never be able to play a round of 18 with you again. We were never able to take that golfing trip to the UK and experience all the wonderful courses you had longed to play at. It pains me to know that we will never get to make those memories, but I can assure you that we made plenty with what the time we had together. And love. As Scott just poignantly stated, my father would never hurt a fly. And I cannot tell you how many times my mom would tell Sam and I how excited he would be for us to come home. As she just said to us the other night, your father lived for you kids. He also lived for Archie, my sister's gorgeous 2-year-old nephew. While his time with him was short, I know it brings solace to David and Sam that he was able to meet at least one grandchild. I am certain he will be looking down with happiness at all his future grandchildren. Sam, thank you for being my rock and helping me get through these past couple of years. For they were extremely difficult, as you can all imagine. So much of Dad lives in the two of us now, and you certainly got his toughness, with a smidge of stubbornness. And seeing how upset you were, David, truly captured how great our father was and the impact he had on our family, including my girlfriend, Hannah. Hannah, just know that my father truly loved you and knew how amazing you are. Lastly, I want to and need to speak about my mom. In typical fashion, she was the rock of our family. She had to witness day in and day out what this terrible disease can do to someone. But she took care of him every day without question, never leaving his side, no matter how difficult times would get. No words can truly be spoken that captures how grateful Sam and I are that you were able to accept this large responsibility. And just know that at the end of the day, you truly did an amazing job. Your relationship with Dad was a beautiful one, and one that I hope to have in the future as well. Dad, I know you were up there listening today, and I just want to say that I do not know how you did it. As I mentioned before, you never complained, you never whined, and you never felt sorry for yourself, at least as far as I knew. I know personally that I would never have been as brave as you, and we will all miss you dearly. And trust me, not a day will go by that Sam, Mom, and I am sure many others in this room, will not miss you and think about you. But as cliche as it sounds, I know you are finally released from any suffering and able to do the things you should have experienced during retirement. Golfing several times a week, living in Florida, probably Boca, watching all of your sports, and eating some damn good food. I will end this speech the only way I know how. E-A-G-L-E-S, Eagles. I love you, Dad. Go Birds.
Please rise for the memorial prayer. exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, to the soul of our dear Stephen Shpeen, who now has gone to his eternal home. Master of mercy, we beseech you, remember all the worthy and righteous deeds that Steve performed here in the land of the living. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. God, you are his portion. May he ever rest in peace. Mourning is the price we pay for having the courage to love others. Even in our grief, we know that the wonder of human life is too complex and too magnificent to be memorialized merely in endless pain. The gifts of spirit our loved ones gave to us cannot be measured or weighed, nor can they ever be lost or tarnished with time. So even in our darkest hours, even when our hearts are so heavy within us, we know that some of their light, and their warmth, and their love will always be with us, bringing us comfort and courage, and in the fullness of time, we pray, healing and peace. And may the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved, as together we say. Amen.
Will the pallbearers please step to the center aisle? Can you remain seated, please, just for a moment?